The night was quiet in Chicago. Too quiet. At exactly 3:47 a.m. on October 17, 2024, a blood-curdling scream shattered the silence of a luxury apartment building in Lincoln Park. Within minutes, 911 operators received a frantic call from a neighbor in the building. The voice was shaking, barely coherent. Someone screaming. "I think something terrible happened in 8D. Please hurry." When Chicago police officers arrived at the scene, they had no idea what awaited them behind that door. The apartment was eerily still. No signs of forced entry, no broken windows, nothing that suggested a break-in or a robbery gone wrong. But what they found inside apartment 8D would haunt even the most experienced detectives on the force. A young woman lay motionless on the living room floor. She was 27 years old, a graduate student at Northwestern University. Her entire life ahead of her. Dreams of building a career in international relations, of making her family proud, of living the life she'd always imagined when she first set foot in Chicago just 8 months earlier. But now all of that was gone, taken, stolen in the cruelest way imaginable. This wasn't a random attack. This wasn't a burglary. This wasn't some stranger who climbed through a window in the dead of night. No, this was something far more personal. Something that would send shock waves through the community and raise questions that still linger today. Because the person who took her life wasn't a stranger at all. Her name was Priya. But what matters most are her dreams. She came from Delhi, India with hope in her heart and determination in her eyes. She'd earned a prestigious scholarship to study at one of America's top universities. Her parents had saved every rupee they could to support her journey. Her mother would video call her every Sunday morning, Chicago time, just to see her daughter's face and hear about her week. Her father worked double shifts to send her a little extra money each month, even though she insisted she didn't need it. She was smart, ambitious, kind. Her professors at Northwestern described her as one of their brightest students. She volunteered at a refugee support center on weekends, helping other immigrants navigate life in America. She had friends from dozens of countries. She loved exploring the city, trying deep dish pizza, visiting the Art Institute on free admission days. She would walk along Lake Michigan with her headphones on, calling her best friend back home, telling her everything about this beautiful, overwhelming city. 8 months. That's all the time she got to live her American dream. 8 months of classes and friendships and late-night study sessions and dreams of graduation day. 8 months before it all ended in that apartment, before everything she'd worked for, everything she'd sacrificed, everything her family had invested in her future came crashing down in one violent, unthinkable moment. But here's what makes the story even more devastating. The person who murdered her wasn't a stranger lurking in the shadows. It wasn't some random act of violence. The killer was someone she trusted completely. Someone she saw every single day. Someone who knew her schedule, her habits, her fears, her secrets. Someone who shared her home, ate meals with her, laughed with her, lived just feet away from her bedroom. The killer was her roommate. If you want to hear the full truth of what happened in apartment 8D, make sure you're subscribed to Crime Canvas because this story is about to reveal the devastating power of betrayal, jealousy, and revenge. To understand how this happened, how a friendship could turn into something so dark and twisted, how trust could transform into murder, we need to go back to the beginning. Back to February 2024 when a young woman from India was searching online for a place to live in Chicago. Back to a simple Craigslist ad that read, "Roommate wanted, 2-bedroom apartment, Lincoln Park, female preferred, must be clean, respectful, and friendly." That ad seemed innocent enough. Thousands like it are posted every single day in Chicago. But this one would set in motion a chain of events that would end in tragedy. A chain that involved love, lies, obsession, jealousy, and ultimately revenge. February 2024. Priya was desperate to find a place to live. Northwestern University housing was full, and the private apartments she'd looked at were either too expensive or in neighborhoods that made her parents nervous when she showed them pictures on video calls. She'd been staying in a cramped hostel, commuting over an hour each way to campus, and it was exhausting. Then she saw it. A listing on a roommate finder website. 2-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park. The rent was manageable if split between 2 people. The photos looked clean, bright, safe. She sent a message that same night. The response came within an hour. The roommate's name was Jessica. She was 30 years old, worked in fashion marketing, and had been living in the apartment for 3 years. She seemed warm in her messages, using lots of exclamation points and emojis. They agreed to meet for coffee the next day at a Starbucks near the apartment. When Priya arrived, nervous and clutching her portfolio of references and bank statements, Jessica immediately put her at ease. She was stylish, confident, with an easy smile and an openness that felt genuine. They talked for 2 hours about Chicago, about their jobs, about their families. Jessica even offered to help her move in if she wanted the room. Priya loved the apartment the moment she walked in. Large windows with natural light pouring through. A small but functional kitchen. The second bedroom was perfect, already furnished with a bed, desk, and dresser. The building had a doorman, a laundry room, and even a rooftop terrace with views of the city skyline. It felt safe. It felt like home. She signed the lease that week. The first month was like a dream. Jessica and Priya clicked instantly. They'd cook dinner together, trying to teach each other recipes from their different cultures. Jessica loved learning about Indian spices and Bollywood movies. Priya was fascinated by Jessica's stories about working in fashion, the shows she attended, the celebrities she'd met. They'd stay up late watching Netflix, sharing a bottle of wine, talking about their dreams and their fears. Jessica called her my Indian sister. Priya felt like she'd found not just a roommate, but a real friend in this massive, sometimes lonely city. Then about 6 weeks after she moved in, Jessica's boyfriend came over for dinner. His name was Daniel. He was 37 years old, an investment banker at one of those firms in the Loop with a name that sounds powerful and expensive. He'd been dating Jessica for 2 years. And from the way Jessica talked about him, it was serious. They were talking about moving in together eventually, maybe even engagement. When he walked through the door that first evening, Priya understood why Jessica was so smitten. Daniel was handsome in that polished, expensive way. Designer clothes that fit perfectly, a watch that probably cost more than a semester of tuition. But more than his looks, it was his presence. He filled the room with confidence. What struck Priya most though was how interested he seemed in her. Not in a flirtatious way, at least not at first. He asked genuine questions about Delhi, about her studies, about what brought her to America. He'd traveled to India twice for work and knew some Hindi phrases that made her laugh. He asked about her family, her goals, what she thought of Chicago so far. Jessica beamed, clearly proud that her boyfriend and her new roommate were getting along so well. They ordered Thai food, drank wine, and talked until midnight. It felt easy, comfortable, like they'd all known each other for years instead of hours. Daniel started coming around more often after that. Friday movie nights became a tradition. Sunday morning coffee runs. He'd bring bagels from that famous place on Clark Street. Sometimes he'd stop by after work while Jessica was still at the office, and he'd chat with Priya while she studied at the kitchen table. He was easy to talk to, funny, smart. He never made her feel like a third wheel, which she'd worried about. He treated her like a friend, like someone whose opinion mattered. But looking back, that was when the seeds were planted. That was when the boundaries started to blur in ways none of them fully recognized. That was when something dangerous started growing in the shadows of what seemed like a perfect living situation. Everything changed in late April when Jessica had to travel to Paris for Fashion Week. It was a huge opportunity for her career. A chance to represent her company at one of the most important events in the industry. She'd be gone for 10 days. Priya assured her she'd be fine alone in the apartment. She had midterms to study for anyway. Jessica left on a Monday morning, excited and nervous, hugging Priya goodbye and making her promise to water her plants. That Thursday night, Priya was at the kitchen table, surrounded by textbooks and notes, stressed about an exam the next morning. Around 9 p.m. there was a knock at the door. It was Daniel. He said he was in the neighborhood and wanted to check on her, make sure she was doing okay without Jessica around. It was thoughtful, sweet even. She invited him in, offered him a beer from the fridge. They ended up talking for 3 hours. Not about small talk or surface things but real things. He told her about the pressure he felt at work, about his immigrant parents who sacrificed everything so he could have opportunities they never had. She opened up about her homesickness, about the guilt she felt being so far from her family, about the fear that she might fail and disappoint everyone who believed in her. There was something about that conversation that shifted things. A connection that went deeper than casual friendship. When he left that night, he hugged her goodbye. It lasted a second too long. Neither of them mentioned it. The text messages started the next day. Just a simple "How did your exam go?" Then another the day after. "Want to grab coffee before your afternoon class?" She told herself it was innocent. He was just being nice, being a good friend. Jessica would be happy they were getting along so well. But somewhere deep down in a place she didn't want to examine too closely, she knew it was becoming something else. The messages got longer, more personal. They'd meet for coffee near Northwestern, always at places far from anywhere Jessica might see them. Not because they were doing anything wrong, she told herself. Just because it was easier this way, less complicated. When Jessica came back from Paris, everything seemed normal on the surface. The three of them had dinner together, Jessica showing them photos from the trip, talking about the runway shows and after-parties. But underneath there was now a secret. Small, maybe meaningless, but a secret nonetheless. Priya and Daniel would exchange glances across the table. Quick text messages deleted immediately after sending. It felt dangerous. It felt wrong. But it also felt thrilling in a way she'd never experienced before. November arrived with the first real cold snap of the season. Jessica was working late on a big campaign launch. Daniel texted Priya asking if she wanted to come up to the rooftop. He'd grabbed a bottle of champagne from a work event and didn't want to drink alone. She should have said no. She knew she should have said no. But she didn't. She put on a jacket and met him up there. The city stretched out before them, a million lights twinkling in the darkness. They drank champagne from plastic cups, their breath visible in the cold air. They talked about nothing and everything. And then, in a moment that would change all their lives forever, he kissed her. She kissed him back. And in that instant, everything became impossibly complicated. The affair continued in secret for 3 months. 3 months of stolen moments and elaborate lies. They'd meet at hotels and neighborhoods where no one they knew would see them. He'd book conference rooms at his office after hours. They'd have dinner at restaurants in the suburbs, far from anyone's prying eyes. Every text message was deleted. Every plan was carefully coordinated around Jessica's schedule. Priya lived 2 lives. The one where she was Jessica's friend and roommate, and the one where she was sleeping with Jessica's boyfriend. The guilt ate at her constantly. She'd lie awake at night in her room, listening to Jessica watching TV in the living room, and feel sick with shame. She'd tell herself she'd end it tomorrow. But tomorrow would come and Daniel would text and she'd fall back into it. He told her he loved her. He told her he'd never felt this way before. He told her he was going to break up with Jessica, that he just needed to find the right time. She wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. Jessica noticed nothing. Or if she did, she didn't say anything. She still called Priya her sister. Still shared her clothes and her secrets. Still talked about Daniel like he was the love of her life, like they were building a future together. The betrayal was total and complete, happening every single day under the same roof. For 3 months they lived this lie. 3 months of hotels and deleted messages and looking Jessica in the eye while hiding the biggest secret of all. 3 months of Priya telling herself that love, or whatever this was, justified the deception. 3 months of Daniel playing both women, keeping both of them close, having everything he wanted without having to choose. But secrets, no matter how carefully you guard them, have a way of coming to light. And when this secret finally exploded into the open, it would set off a chain reaction that would end in tragedy. Because betrayal, especially betrayal this deep, this personal, this intimate, doesn't just hurt. It destroys. And sometimes it kills. If you're finding this story as gripping as we are telling it, make sure you're subscribed to Crime Canvas. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next, because this story is about to take a turn that nobody saw coming. February 14th, 2025. Valentine's Day. The day that was supposed to celebrate love became the day everything fell apart. Jessica had planned a romantic evening. She'd made a reservation at Daniel's favorite steakhouse downtown, bought a new dress, even splurged on expensive perfume. Daniel was supposed to pick her up at 7 o'clock. She was getting ready in her bedroom, curling her hair, when she realized she'd left her phone charger at his apartment the weekend before. She texted him asking if he could bring it. No response. She called. Straight to voicemail. Weird but not alarming. He was probably in a meeting. Then she remembered he'd left his iPad at her apartment last week. She could text herself from his device using iMessage and it would show up on his phone. A little trick they'd discovered months ago. She grabbed the iPad from the living room, opened it and went to messages. That's when she saw it. A text thread at the top of his messages, recent from that morning. The preview showed an attached photo and a message that made her blood run cold. The sender was Priya. Jessica's hands started shaking as she opened the thread. Photo after photo. Messages that left nothing to the imagination. Explicit, intimate, recent. Very recent. Some from the night before. Some from that very morning. She scrolled up, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might explode. The messages went back months. November, December, January, February. While she'd been planning Valentine's Day, her boyfriend and her roommate had been planning their next secret meeting. She couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. This couldn't be real. Not Priya. Not the girl she'd welcomed into her home. Not the girl she'd called her sister. Not with Daniel. Not the man she'd been planning a future with. She looked at the timestamp on the last message. 20 minutes ago. Priya had texted, "See you at the library." Studying until 6 o'clock. Northwestern Library. Jessica checked the time. 4:47 p.m. She grabbed her coat and ran. The train ride to Northwestern felt like it took hours. Jessica's mind was racing, replaying every moment of the last few months. Every time Daniel had come over. Every time Priya had smiled at her. Every dinner, every movie night, every conversation. It had all been a lie. They'd been laughing at her, playing her for a fool in her own home. She burst out of the station and ran toward the library. Students were scattered across the steps, enjoying the unusually warm February afternoon. And there they were. Daniel and Priya sitting together on a bench near the entrance. Close. Too close. His hand was on her knee. They were laughing about something. Jessica screamed Priya's name. Heads turned. Conversation stopped. Priya looked up and the color drained from her face. She stood up immediately, stepping away from Daniel like she'd been burned. Daniel just sat there, frozen, his expression unreadable. Jessica was screaming now, not caring who heard. How long? How long have you been sleeping with my boyfriend? Students were pulling out their phones, recording. Priya was crying, trying to speak, but no words came out. Jessica turned to Daniel. Say something. Tell me this isn't what it looks like. Daniel stood up slowly. He looked at Jessica, then at Priya, then back at Jessica. And without saying a single word, he walked to the curb and got into a cab. Just like that, he left both of them standing there. He didn't choose. He didn't explain. He didn't apologize. He just disappeared into traffic, leaving chaos in his wake. Jessica turned back to Priya, who was sobbing now, shaking, surrounded by dozens of staring students. You're dead to me, Jessica said quietly. Then she walked away. Priya stood there for a long time, humiliated and terrified. Students whispered and pointed. Someone had definitely filmed the whole thing. She felt like she might throw up. Eventually, she gathered her things and started the long walk back to the apartment. She didn't want to go back there, but she had nowhere else to go. When Priya finally opened the apartment door around 8 o'clock that night, Jessica was sitting on the couch waiting. The lights were off except for one lamp. Jessica's face was puffy from crying. Her Valentine's Day makeup smeared and ruined. Priya tried to speak, to apologize, but Jessica held up her hand. Don't. I don't want to hear your voice right now. But Priya couldn't stay quiet. The words poured out of her. She was sorry. So sorry. She never meant for it to happen. She tried to stop it. She knew it was wrong. She hated herself for it. The tears were real. The remorse was genuine. She'd destroyed a friendship, betrayed someone who'd only shown her kindness. She knew there was no excuse, no justification that could make this okay. Jessica listened to it all with an expression like stone. When Priya finally ran out of words, Jessica stood up. I trusted you with my home. I trusted you with my life. I called you my sister. And you were sleeping with my boyfriend in my apartment while I was at work, while I was traveling, while I was planning a future with him. Priya couldn't look at her. I'm so sorry. You have 48 hours to find a new place. I never want to see your face again. Then Jessica walked into her bedroom and locked the door. Priya barely slept that night. She spent the next 2 days frantically searching for apartments, calling everyone she knew, begging for leads. But Chicago real estate moves slow, and affordable apartments don't just appear overnight. Everything was too expensive, too far from campus, or required a move-in date weeks away. The 48-hour deadline came and went. She had nowhere to go. On the third day, something changed. Priya was in her room crying, trying to figure out her next move, when she heard Jessica moving around in the apartment. Then Jessica knocked on her door. Priya opened it nervously. Jessica was standing there holding a box. A shoe box. She opened it. Inside were photos, printed photos of Priya and Daniel. Some Priya didn't even know existed. There were screenshots of text messages, hotel receipts, a whole timeline of the affair documented in painful detail. You used my bed, Jessica said quietly. Her voice wasn't angry anymore. It was something else. Something scarier. You wore my jewelry. My clothes. While you were with him. Priya felt like the floor was falling out from under her. Jessica interrupted. Don't rush to find a place. Take your time. Then she smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was cold, calculated. We're both adults. We can handle living together a little longer. Priya felt a wave of relief. Maybe Jessica was willing to forgive. Maybe they could move past this. Maybe everything would be okay. She had no idea what Jessica was really planning. The weeks turned into months. Priya couldn't find an apartment she could afford. Every listing was either a scam or required upfront costs she didn't have. She was trapped, living with someone she'd betrayed, someone who barely spoke to her. The apartment became a war zone of silence. Jessica stopped cooking with her, stopped watching TV with her, stopped acknowledging her existence. Most days she'd come home from work, walk past Priya like she was invisible and lock herself in her room. But sometimes Jessica would look at her. Really look at her. And there was something in those looks that made Priya's skin crawl. It wasn't anger anymore. It was something colder. Something patient. Daniel, meanwhile, was playing both of them. He'd call Priya late at night, telling her he missed her, that he was sorry for running away, that he wanted to see her. Then he'd call Jessica, saying the same things, begging for another chance. He played them against each other, keeping both on the hook, never fully committing to either. Priya wanted to block him, to cut him off completely. But she was lonely and scared, and he was the only person who seemed to care. April passed. Then May. Then June. The summer was brutal. The apartment's air conditioning barely worked, and the heat made the tension unbearable. July. August. September. 8 months of this toxic, suffocating existence. 8 months of walking on eggshells. Of avoiding eye contact. Of listening to Jessica pace in her room at night. 8 months of Priya telling herself she just needed a little more time to save money, to find something affordable, to escape. She didn't realize that Jessica wasn't waiting for her to leave. Jessica was waiting for the right moment. The perfect moment. Because Jessica had been planning something for months. Something that would make Priya pay for every lie, every betrayal, every moment she'd spent in Daniel's arms. And that moment was coming soon. Very soon. October 16, 2024. 8 months had passed since that Valentine's Day disaster. 8 months of cold silence and hostile glances. 8 months of Priya desperately searching for a way out, checking apartment listings every single day, watching her savings account refuse to grow fast enough. That evening, Priya was at the Northwestern Library studying for her thesis presentation. It was late, almost 11 p.m., when she finally packed up her books and started the train ride back to the apartment. She was exhausted, running on coffee and anxiety. The thesis was due in 2 weeks and she felt nowhere near ready. As she climbed the stairs to the 4th floor, she was already dreading the cold atmosphere waiting behind the door. But when she opened it, something was different. The apartment smelled like cooking. Real cooking, not just reheated takeout. Jessica was in the kitchen stirring a pot of pasta sauce. The table was set for 2. There was a bottle of red wine open, breathing. Music played softly from Jessica's phone. Priya stood frozen in the doorway, confused. Jessica looked up and smiled. Not the cold, bitter expression Priya had grown used to, but something that almost looked genuine. I made dinner. I thought maybe we could talk. Actually talk. Priya's heart jumped. Was this real? Could Jessica actually be ready to move past everything? Jessica, I don't know what to say. Just sit. I've had a lot of time to think. 8 months is a long time to hold on to anger, and honestly, I'm exhausted. You're exhausted. This apartment has been miserable for both of us. I think we need to clear the air. Priya sat down slowly, still cautious, but feeling something she hadn't felt in months. Oh, maybe they could actually heal from this. Maybe they could at least end things peacefully without all this hatred. Jessica brought over 2 plates of pasta and sat across from her. She raised her wine glass. To moving forward, whatever that looks like. They clinked glasses. Priya took a long sip. The wine was good. Expensive. They started eating, and to Priya's amazement, the conversation felt almost normal. Jessica asked about her thesis. Priya asked about Jessica's work. They avoided talking about Daniel, avoided the painful subjects, and just talked like 2 people who used to be friends. For the first time in 8 months, Priya felt her shoulders relax. She finished her first glass of wine. Jessica immediately poured her another. I really am sorry, Priya said, the wine making her emotional. I know I've said it before, but I need you to know I mean it. What I did was unforgivable. Jessica looked at her for a long moment. I know you're sorry. Then she smiled again. Drink up. Let's not ruin the night with heavy stuff. Priya drank and drank. The wine was making her warm, fuzzy. Jessica kept refilling her glass. By the time they finished dinner, Priya had lost count of how many glasses she'd had. Her head felt heavy. The room was starting to tilt slightly. I don't feel so good, Priya said, trying to stand. Her legs wouldn't cooperate. The chair scraped against the floor as she tried to push back from the table. Jessica, something's wrong. She looked up at Jessica's face and froze. The smile was gone. In its place was something cold, something that had been hiding there all along, waiting. What did you do? Priya whispered. Her words were slurring. The room was spinning now. Jessica stood up slowly, calmly. She walked over and looked down at Priya, who was gripping the table, trying desperately to stay conscious. I crushed up sleeping pills. A lot of them. Mixed them into your wine glass before you got home. Priya tried to scream, but it came out as barely a whisper. She tried to move, to run, but her body wasn't responding. She slid from the chair onto the floor, her vision blurring. Jessica crouched down next to her. You took everything from me. My boyfriend, my trust. My home stopped feeling safe because you were in it. Every day I had to look at your face and remember what you did. Every single day for 8 months. Priya's eyes were closing. She was fighting it, trying to stay awake, but the drugs were too strong. Please, she managed to whisper. Please don't. You're probably wondering why I waited so long. Why I didn't kick you out that first week. Why I told you to take your time finding a place. Jessica paused. Because I wanted you to feel safe first. I wanted you to think maybe I'd forgiven you. I wanted you to let your guard down. And you did. You actually thought tonight was about healing. Priya's mind was screaming, but her body had stopped responding. In those final moments, as the darkness closed in, she thought about her mother in Delhi. About the last video call they'd had just that morning. Her mother's excited voice talking about coming to visit for graduation. Graduation that would never happen now. She thought about her father working those double shifts. About her dreams of working at the United Nations, of making a difference in the world. About how one terrible choice, one moment of weakness, had led to this. She thought about Daniel, who'd walked away from both of them without a scratch, without consequences, probably sleeping peacefully in his expensive apartment tonight. And she thought about Jessica. About the friendship they'd had. About late-night conversations and shared laughter. About how betrayal could turn love into something monstrous. Her last conscious thought was a simple one. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Then everything went black. At 3:47 a.m., a neighbor 2 floors down was awakened by sounds. Screaming, crashes, something terrible happening above them. They called 911 immediately. Police arrived at 3:54 a.m. They knocked on the door of apartment 8D. No answer. They could hear something inside though. Crying. They broke down the door. Priya was in the living room. She was gone. Had been for hours. The scene was devastating even for officers who'd seen everything this city had to offer. They found Jessica in her bedroom. She'd taken the rest of the sleeping pills, the whole bottle, trying to follow Priya into death. But she'd miscalculated the dosage. Or maybe some part of her wanted to survive, wanted to face what she'd done. She was unconscious but breathing. On the nightstand next to Jessica's bed was a letter. 5 pages, handwritten. A full confession. Every detail of the affair, the discovery, the 8 months of planning. How she'd bought the sleeping pills weeks ago. How she'd practiced the timing. How she'd waited for the perfect moment when Priya's guard was finally down. The last line of the confession read, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't want it. I just want her to know wherever she is that I made her pay. And I want him to know he did this too. He killed us both. Paramedics rushed Jessica to Northwestern Memorial Hospital. They pumped her stomach, stabilized her. She survived. And when she woke up 3 days later with police officers stationed outside her room, she asked only one question. Is she dead? When they told her yes, Jessica closed her eyes and nodded. Good. Then she asked for a lawyer. The investigation that followed revealed everything. Phone records showed thousands of text messages between Priya and Daniel over those 3 months. Hotel staff remembered seeing them. Security footage from Daniel's office building showed Priya entering late at night, leaving hours later. Detectives brought Daniel in for questioning 3 days after the murder. He showed up with an expensive lawyer. He admitted to the affair, admitted to lying to both women, admitted to being a coward who hurt people he cared about. But Daniel hadn't committed a crime. Cheating isn't illegal. Being a terrible person isn't illegal. He hadn't known about Jessica's plan. Hadn't been involved in the murder. The district attorney's office found no way to charge him. Within 2 weeks, Daniel had left Chicago. Word got around that he'd taken a job in London, transferred through his firm. He deleted all his social media accounts, changed his phone number. Just vanished from the city like he'd never been there at all. 2 women's lives had been destroyed. 1 dead. 1 facing life in prison. And he got to start over somewhere new, in a city where no one knew his name or his story. Jessica's trial never made it to a jury. Her lawyer advised her to take a plea deal. The evidence was overwhelming. In February 2025, Jessica appeared in Cook County Criminal Court and pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. Priya's family had flown in from Delhi, sitting in the front row, holding each other and crying. Jessica's family sat on the opposite side, her mother's face buried in her hands, unable to look at her daughter. The judge asked Jessica if she wanted to make a statement before sentencing. She stood, handcuffed, wearing an orange jumpsuit. "I know there's nothing I can say that will make this better. I took a life. Someone who was young and had dreams and a family who loved her. I planned it. I waited for months. I made her think she was safe and then I killed her. There's no justification for that. None." She paused, tears streaming down her face. "What she did to me hurt. It destroyed me. I felt betrayed in the deepest way possible. But that pain didn't give me the right to do what I did. Nothing gives anyone that right. I let my rage consume me until I became something I don't even recognize. And now a woman is dead because of my choices. Not because of what she did. Because of what I chose to do in response." The judge sentenced her to 25 years to life in prison. She'd be eligible for parole at age 55. The aftermath for the families was devastating. Priya's parents had to fly to Chicago to identify their daughter's body. Her mother collapsed when she saw her, screaming in Hindi, a sound so full of grief that it haunted everyone there that day. They held a small memorial service in Chicago before flying her body back to Delhi. About 50 people came. Classmates from Northwestern, professors who spoke about her brilliance and potential, friends from the refugee center where she'd volunteered. Northwestern University established a scholarship in her name for international students studying human rights. A small plaque was placed in the library where she'd spent so many late nights studying. Her parents set up a foundation in Delhi to help young women pursue education abroad. But nothing could fill the void. Nothing could bring back the daughter they'd sacrificed everything for. The moral questions surrounding the case haunt everyone who hears it. Priya had made a terrible choice, betraying someone who trusted her. That was wrong. Deeply, unquestionably wrong. But did it deserve a death sentence? Jessica had been betrayed in the most intimate way possible, in her own home, by someone she considered family. The pain of that betrayal was real and valid. But did that pain justify murder? Did 8 months of suffering give her the right to plan and execute a killing? And Daniel, the man who played both women, who lied to both, who kept the affair going for his own benefit. He faced no legal consequences. He got to leave, to start over, to pretend it never happened. Was that justice? The truth is, there's no simple answer. This wasn't a story with a clear villain and hero. It was a story about human weakness. About how small choices compound into tragedies. About how pain can transform into something monstrous if we let it. The message here is clear. Walk away. No relationship is worth staying in a toxic situation. No revenge is worth a life. No betrayal justifies murder. There were a dozen moments when any of these three people could have chosen differently. Priya could have ended the affair. Daniel could have been honest. Jessica could have moved out, cut contact, chosen healing over hatred. But they didn't. And now one person is dead. One is in prison for the rest of her productive life. And one walked away free, but carrying the weight of 2 destroyed lives on his conscience, if he has one. 3 people entered this story with dreams and futures. One is in a grave in Delhi. One is in a cell at Logan Correctional Center. One is somewhere in London trying to forget. In the end, nobody won. Everybody lost. The city moved on because cities always do. Chicago is full of stories like this. Tragedies that burn bright for a moment, then fade into memory as new dramas take their place. But in Apartment 8D in Lincoln Park, on a quiet tree-lined street where young professionals dream of building lives, the echoes of what happened will never truly fade. This is a true story. The names have been changed to protect the families. Some details have been altered. But the horror, the betrayal, the tragedy, the senseless waste of young life, that's all real. It happened. And it could happen again. It's probably happening somewhere right now. Another triangle of love and lies moving toward destruction. If you're in a toxic situation, leave. If you're being betrayed, walk away. If you're consumed by rage, get help. Talk to someone. A therapist, a friend, a crisis hotline. Because this story shows us what happens when we don't. When we let pain turn into poison. When we choose revenge over healing. Some betrayals destroy everything they touch. This was one of them. If this story has moved you, taught you something, or opened your eyes to the devastating consequences of unchecked betrayal and revenge, please subscribe to Crime Canvas. Hit that notification bell. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Because awareness can save lives. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, choose healing over hatred, and remember that no matter how deep the pain, there's always another way forward. Always. This is Crime Canvas, reminding you that every choice has consequences, and some choices can never be undone.